Welcome back to the ALSA UK podcast with me, Giovanni Gennari. Today's guest is someone all of us at ALSA have admired for a long time, Ariana Krasniqi. Ariana is a strategic communicator, storyteller, and digital creator with over a decade of experience across diplomacy, branding, and public engagement. She's worked with the Ministers of Foreign Affairs in both Denmark and Kosovo and recently completed the prestigious Citizen Diplomacy Fellowship, where she helped shape Kosovo's international image through powerful digital campaigns. But more than her titles, Ariana is someone who has built a platform that brings clarity, care, and context to some of the most complex conversations around identity, politics, and belonging, especially for young Albanians in the diaspora. I'm so excited to have you here today on the podcast. Thank you for joining us, Ariana.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for the amazing introduction. I think you said it all.
No problem at all. So just so the audience gets to know you, you've had such a diverse career, of course, across countries and sectors. When someone asks you, what do you actually do? What do you usually say?
To just really simplify it, I just say communication and consulting to make it as basic as possible.
What were you like growing up? Did younger Ariana imagine doing any of the work that you're doing right now?
Yes, I've asked my parents as well, but I was really curious and I wanted to know everything about everything. And I needed I couldn't just get on with one short explanation. I needed to dive deeper into it. And I started reading really young as well. So I would just hide from all the other kids and just read. And I was really good at languages from the start. So when I was 4, I already spoke 4 languages. So it just came very naturally, and both speaking all the time in all kinds of languages and reading a lot. And that just kept going. And the older I got, the more, of course, I was also interested in Albanian history. And I would always have my flag in the background and would do even content when I was young, and there wasn't really there was Facebook. But then I would talk about Kosovo as well in my posts and what's going on there and discuss it with my friends. So I would always just have my room full of anything Albanian, and we would go every summer as well. So it just got me to really connect. So yeah, very curious as a young person too.
That's amazing to hear. What were the 4 languages?
Back then, I spoke Spanish because we lived in Spain for 2 years, but I don't anymore, just very little. And German, because I was born in Germany, and Albanian, of course, we always spoke Albanian at home. And then I learned Danish. And now I switched that with Spanish with English.
Very cool. So, after nearly 30 years abroad, of course, what made you decide to return to Kosovo now that you have? And what did it feel like to land back in Pristina and finally call Kosovo home again?
I always wanted to move here, so I already knew that was going to happen at some point in my life. But of course, and I've seen this issue with everybody, you need to have a job. You need to figure out how to actually live here and use the skills you have from abroad here as well in a positive way. So I needed that time, and that was a year and a half ago when I finally had the opportunity. I was supposed to move in 2020, but then COVID happened. So that was a setback for 2 years. But I always kind of knew. And I also lived in Germany when I was in my during my bachelor's degree. I went there for 1 semester originally, then 2 semesters. So I stayed a year in a small town called Friedrichshafen in Bodensee. It's so pretty and amazing. And I kind of wanted to see more than just Denmark. Also, growing up, obviously, when we were as refugees, we moved around a lot. So I don't know, it just became very natural for me. And then as soon as I returned from Germany, I moved to the UK actually, to Alton, also a small town near London, 40 minutes away. So I would spend my weekends in London, but working in Alton, which was really amazing because I didn't know anybody in the UK. And I'd like to challenge myself in that way and just go somewhere where nobody knows me and I can just kind of learn and see how to make friends. And I always would make a lot of Albanian friends, of course. There's always an Albanian community anywhere you go. Not in Alton, but in London there was. And then I moved back to Denmark again, did my master's degree. And during my master's degree, then I went to Germany, to Munich, and worked for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Denmark, but in Germany. So I would do communication with the Danish people and German companies and so on and so forth, which was also amazing. Didn't know anybody in Munich, met a lot of Albanians. Um, and that's when I went back home and was sure that I would go to Pristina. And obviously there was a lockdown for 2 years. And during that time, I was just thinking how can I make it work, what kind of job do I need to have, what kind of skills do I need to have, and then it worked out 3 years later, and then I finally moved.
Was it difficult reconnecting with your roots professionally, personally? How did it feel natural? I know you moved a lot, but did it feel different when you were in Kosovo?
I think it was the easiest move of all, definitely, because I was so used to, especially Pristina, because it was literally every summer our parents would always take us here, as a lot of Albanian families do. So it wasn't something new, but of course it's new to actually work here, and that's what I was aiming for with the program, especially because when I got here, I was already starting to build my client portfolio and work with Danish companies and German companies, but I really wanted to experience working with Albanians as well, because I feel like that's how you get the full picture, because it's easy to move here and just work remotely and like you're not really a part of it. So I applied to the Citizen Diplomacy Fellowship and worked at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So I really got to see like firsthand how things function in the public sector. And now I work in the private sector as well here in Kosovo, also one of my clients, and completely different, obviously. But this, my experience is that it's the same in every country. You always have the public sector, which moves a little bit slower, and then you have the private sector where it doesn't really matter where you live. Everything just goes.
Very true. And you touched on the CDF. So you've just completed it. What did that involve? What does citizen diplomacy actually mean in practice?
In practice, it means you're an ambassador for Kosovo, of course, and that's also why it's interesting that it's the Citizen Diplomacy Fellowship is for Albanians in the diaspora only, so they can return here for 10 months and work at any ministry or institution that matches with their skills as well and where they're needed. And a lot of, well, we were 23 fellows this cohort, and there will be a fourth one, hopefully, maybe after summer, since the government is changing and everything. But for me, it involved definitely finding more ways of promoting Kosovo. That's what I do also with my channel. And we had a bunch of different conferences that were also international, where we had like really great speakers from all over, like Australia, the US, from South America, everywhere. And we, as fellows, got to welcome them all to Kosovo, to show them around, which is amazing in and of itself, because then you create this word of mouth, and all of them want to join the next conference. One of them was Ulpiana Forum, where all of them want to join next year and come back to Kosovo, even though it was their first time, but they had such a great time here. And they are also now promoting on their social media and word of mouth how amazing Kosovo is, also for like higher institution, because these are political events or institutional events rather. And I was, because of my skill set, I was taking care of the communication part and the social media for Ulpiana Forum, for Kosova Par, which is like a public administration conference, which was amazing as well. There were so many great speakers. And for we also had the first conference for the International War of Crimes institution, IKKLÖA, and that was also very heartbreaking, of course, because we dove deep into the war crimes that happened in Kosovo. But it was great to be a part of. But for me, it was really great to be able to make it all public and post everything that was said. And there was like maybe 20 panels, 30 panels at some of the conferences, that everything got posted like with a recap of what happened. And I feel like these things put Kosovo more on the map, because maybe a lot of people don't know that we actually have these kind of conferences and what kind of work the ministry does. So that was a really huge part of it for me, and for all the other fellows as well. Everyone was super engaged.
It's such an amazing thing. So I just want to touch on one of the projects of course, you shaped a lot of Kosovo's international image online through the CDF. What were some of the challenges of that and then some of the wins?
For challenges, I'm not sure, because I kind of like did my own thing. But it's always challenge. I would say it's challenging here in Kosovo that everything gets, it's kind of fast moving. It's not as structured as in Denmark, where you would maybe plan a conference 2 years ahead and know everything. Here, like maybe 2 months is like good timing. And there were so many hands on deck and so many people engaged. But what's great here is that everybody's so motivated to actually do it, where maybe I didn't get the same vibe in back in Denmark, because it's a job. But here everyone so badly wants to promote Kosovo and do good for Kosovo, and even for free, which a lot of people do, just to because of their love for this country and for its people. So that's something unique, and that was really amazing. But for me, yeah, time. Like I need more time to develop a social media strategy, but it worked out in the end. I think I did 120 posts in 48 hours,
Well,
but it worked.
it shows. And as you said, it's more about the passion and trying to show everyone what the new opportunities are, the different types of events. So it's great to hear. So then, what was that pinnacle moment during your fellowship that reminded you why this kind of work matters?
There were so many of those moments, but it was always when I was sitting with the other fellows and talking about staying here, and over half of them wanted to stay in Kosovo and were trying to find ways to be here. A lot of them were obviously everyone was living here for the first time, but a lot of them had also not been used, especially the ones from the US or Canada or like further away, had not been used to these long summers and had never imagined that life here would be that amazing, that they actually wanted to build a future here. And that kept just reminding me of this. And obviously just like the kindness everyone showed and how much they care. There was a lot of great moments for sure.
We'll go on to your career a little bit. So, of course, your background spans for a range of stuff: marketing, branding, diplomacy, political commentary. Did you always plan this? How did your path actually evolve?
I think, yeah, it was kind of in the plan because I studied communication. International business communication was my bachelor's degree, so I always is my bachelor's degree. So I always knew it was something with communication, but I never imagined that it would be so broad and with so many different industries as it has been now. But I'm also not surprised at the same time because I don't like doing the same thing over and over again and just being stuck in one industry. I believe that it's great to test your skill set in so many different ones and expand as much as you can because you also have more freedom to choose the projects you want to work on, definitely. And I liked what I really liked about marketing and communication early on was the fact that I like to move around. I like to live in different countries. And if I had studied maybe law or anything else, it would have constrained me to Denmark, which was my argument to my parents back then. That I wanted something that you can do internationally and you don't need a second degree or anything to do it. And this worked out very well. And I was more focused on the public sector in the beginning. I was really interested in like working in embassies, especially for like the Danish embassy or the German embassy. And then later on move on to Kosovo as well when I actually had something to contribute with. But then it just kind of like all got smudged in with the private sector. And now I just like the fast pace of the private sector even more. And I found maybe working in an embassy a bit more constraining in some ways.
What skills or experiences from your time in Denmark were you able to incorporate into life in Kosovo now?
Routines and processes, which definitely have been really helpful for my job. A lot of the things I do are independently, so I'll do those processes for myself. But I'm personally at my, especially in my job, I'm really organized. I like everything to be very and that has helped me a lot, and it has also helped my colleagues in the same way. I think especially you can also see the difference, like depending on which countries people are from, because if you have if you have people who grew up maybe in Italy, they'll have like a different perception. They'll be more like here. But the ones that from Denmark, from Switzerland, for example, we were all like super highly organized and very like on point. Everything had to have a spreadsheet. Everything had to have graphs and everything to monitor every single movement. But that's how I work best. And I've been able to apply this to every industry, like both at the ministry and now I also work with Dafina Naziri, where I do the same thing. So I really like to get into a company and see what are they doing and how can we optimize that. And that's definitely something from Denmark.
It's
And
very cool to hear. It's very, very cool to hear. And I can only imagine, I've worked with you and you can tell everything just feels like hands on, let's get it done now and systems later.
yeah,
But it's very cool.
exactly.
So we'll move on to one of your most influential parts, of course, your content creation. You break down such complex topics in such a really human way. How do you decide what stories to tell and how to approach them?
A lot of it is mainly just in whatever I feel inspired to do. I don't like to follow like trends or whatever people are talking about. I like to, if it's something that really interests me, I feel like it comes across more authentic and I don't have to just I like to really research what I'm talking about, especially for the history videos. I don't want to say anything misleading or false, and I make sure to put my sources up and also in advance say this has not been like completely verified yet, like it's a theory, because a lot of people will just like hear something and then run with it, which I don't like. With the videos, it's a bit more difficult because people will always get insulted no matter how you try to do it. And like people are with different political parties. So even when I just do a video just talking about Kosovo as a whole, you still have comments from people thinking like, oh, you're with this or this government, or you're doing this for any other reason than just being informational, which has bothered me. So I kind of stopped doing it while I was doing my fellowship, because I didn't want it to get all blurred up or make it seem like I was doing it for another reason than actually just being helpful. So that the political ones were a bit more difficult, for sure, and I'm trying to still figure it out and work out how to make them as objective as possible, but it's always difficult. So with the and even with the history ones, like people think they're too subjective sometimes. A lot of people like it, but usually I'll wake up in the morning. I had a conversation with a friend or something about Shotegalica or any like figure, and then I'll go in and really do my research and then make a video.
And it shows through your content. It's very authentic and it shows the true passion behind it all. But then how do you balance being vulnerable whilst also being strategic? Of course, TikTok is also a numbers game. So how have you improved your storytelling for the Albanians, the whole diaspora, and especially global viewers that have no links to Albania or Kosovo?
I think obviously the trick is like a good hook, but I don't want to do like clickbait. I will always explain what I'm going to talk about. Like that's always like just off the bat with any video. I really want people to know what they're getting and not be disappointed. And I make it as short as I can. Honestly, I feel like that's key today, because people just don't have time or they don't want to. And most people will just like fast forward the video just to like get they want to know, but they don't want to spend 5 minutes seeing the whole actual video, which is a bit problematic. But that's definitely it. And I think, as I said, if you make it authentic, the right people will come. It's not every video that will go viral. Unfortunately, it's mainly the videos that trigger people or are negative that will go viral, which I really try not to do. Except for with one certain country and one certain audience, but with any videos for like directly aimed only at Albanians, I really tried to make it as positive as possible. And it might not get as many views, but at least it's informational. And when it's out there and it has the right keywords, I know that people will find it whenever they search for something like Hynesha, what does that mean? And what did Rogova do? And stuff like that. Then my videos will come up, and then it will be beneficial in the long run, hopefully. And it's the truth instead of just some made up story for views, which I really don't like. I've seen a lot of videos where they just like briefly go over Skanderbeu or something else, and a lot of it is just like totally misleading and basically just ChatGPT and a Wikipedia page, and then just 30 seconds trying to explain such a complex topic is not gonna work.
Very true. And I can kind of tell from when I went to Iberia myself, I just searched Iberia and your videos came up as well. So it shows that it's that type of SEO using those keywords, good hooks. And I wanted to touch on those experiences. Of course, you went to Iberia, you went to Anvutkoy, if I say it right, in Turkey. These are places where there's Albanian communities that have lived for centuries, holding on to language and culture from over 500 years. What drew you to those places, and what was it like connecting with those kind of communities?
I really wanted to see what it's like with obviously like growing up as like an immigrant myself and abroad in the diaspora. I wanted to see like these like long living diasporas like 500 years ago and how they preserved it, because we always got so much thrown at us for like, oh, you're forgetting the culture, you're forgetting everything. And it's like, okay, yeah, but we moved like 30 years ago. You haven't really forgotten anything. When you're living in Europe and it's so close to Kosovo, to Albania, I think it's hard to forget. I also think a lot of people are very misleading about what the culture is. Like in Denmark, you'll have a lot of Albanians stuck in what was 30 years ago, and while people here are actually evolving and moving on. But I really wanted to see what it's like when cultures like mix together after 500 years, and that can also be a very beautiful thing. And definitely in Italy, like that's what I found, the way that Arbresh have taken the best from Italy and the best from Albania is so beautiful and so amazing. And it was something really inspiring for me. And it also like kind of like reconfirms identity, like any identity trouble you have with, because obviously you also love the country you grew up in. You're not supposed to hate where you grew up. If you really hate it, like move somewhere else. But I don't think we should hate the British, or we should hate the Danish or anything like that. They're different, and you can take all the best things from their culture and mix it with your own and make it something beautiful. And the Albrecht definitely have done that. I didn't really meet that many Albanians in Arnavutköy in Turkey. I think it's also a different story with Turkey. Like historically, we didn't have the same issues with Italy as we did with Turkey. I know there is a lot of communities still, but they've been there so long that a lot of them have forgotten the language, unfortunately. And one of the things that really like drew me to go to Istanbul and to Turkey in general was that old song from Ile Shachiri Pochore, which I've also made a video about. It's like a song that always gets me super emotional because there are a lot of Albanians there who have forgotten the language, and but whenever they do meet Albanians, they get super sentimental and they're like, "I'm Albanian too, I'm Albanian too," and they're so proud of showing it, which is something they have not been freely open to do before, whereas the Albrecht have been so free to just express their culture and express and keep the language intact and everything. And that's a huge difference and shows what can happen when a country lets you immigrate the right way, not assimilate, which Turkey, not so much, but Italy for sure. I don't know, were you to Hora Brezhva or Calabria?
I was in Calabria.
Oh, that's where I'm going next month. So I'm
Amazing.
so excited to go to Calabria as well. I know there's a lot of communities around, but Calabria and then Sicily is definitely the ones. But for Calabria, I'm so excited.
Calabria was so cool, and it's very true. And what you're touching is that I had a friend who was Irish that was from Calabria that I met on the original program, and just speaking to him a lot, he taught me so much about how the Italians allowed them to have their culture, allowed them to express it, especially because one of the things I made a video on as well, he was speaking about how the Kingdom of Italy, of course, Italy was separated into little counties or little mini countries themselves. And they talked about how the Irish fought against the Italian fascists to bring together the Kingdom of Italy, and how the Italian generals spoke good about the Irish and told them that these Irish have come to Italy and fought for us the same way they would have fought for Albania. And it showed that there was like true respect. And I went for Easter, so they had the Dite Vale, which was on Tuesday, which was amazing. And of course, they have all the Albanian groups, but then there was Italian groups as well, all dancing, singing Italian as well. And it just showed that their Irish are assimilated, they learn Italian, they're very good, but they keep their culture. And the Italians in Calabria, the Calabrish, they like were, how to say, like expressing it for them as well, which was amazing. And then even just speaking to people on the streets, they were just randomly stopping me because they'd see me as an outsider. I was in the village of Frasineto, and they would just speak to me and they're like, "Where are you from?" And then I'm like, "Oh, from Skoda." And they didn't know what Skoda was, but from Skuteri, because that's how they say it. And we're like, "Oh, Skuteri." And you just randomly speak to people. I could understand their Albanian. A lot of the Irish are from southern Albania, but then they were speaking such an old dialect that I could kind of understand it. Of course, there's Italian mixed words, but it was so cool to
It
see.
gives you such a nice feeling. Like I always like say like you hear like Skanderbeos like Albanian, which is so exciting for me. It's like Shakespearean English, for example, like for a British person, like you just hear like how they spoke back in the day, which is such a insane way to preserve culture. And this would never happen if, like, yeah, history makes miracles happen, and that's what I really love about that Brecht. And it was the same way in Horar Brejbe. Same, like everyone would stop you. I wasn't even there like in high season. I was there like around the 1st of May, which they were all celebrating as well, and a lot of Italians came to celebrate in that city because like that town, because there had been a great resistance as well to fascism, and so like all of these things. And all the when I went to Palermo first, and every time I said I was Albanian, everyone was like, "Oh, there's this great town, like 40 minutes drive from here. They're all Albanian," and it was just Italians just being so kind and just speaking so highly of this community, which is really not something you see anywhere else in Europe. So I love that uniqueness of it, and of course, seeing all the Albanian flags everywhere.
Of course, I was so surprised. All the writings, of course, are in Italian and Albanian or Irish. And even the church in Frasneto, it had the Our Father prayer, like in Albanian across the whole church. And then I asked him, and then he told me they still sing hymns in Irish, which I would have thought they would have sung in Italian. But it shows that they're trying to preserve it. And I feel like Sicilia was more, from what I was hearing, Sicily is more engaging with tourism, but Calabria now is trying to make more tourism to show their Irish, because one of the biggest problems I saw with the Irish from talking to them as well was that now there's globalization, kind of like how we are as diaspora. People are moving away, so there was a lot going to Napoli, Milano, etc., or going out. So then not having that community to constantly speak Irish, they were slowly losing the language as well, which is kind of happening with Albanians right now. So it's really engaged to see how the world is moving. And even though they kept it for 500 years, how it will carry on. And one of the things I did tell them was just keep on creating content. Whatever happens, like, because one of the things they said was the dresses that our British have, there's fewer and fewer people that know how to make it. And I just told him, just do a video about it, show someone, so that even if it dies out in 50 or 100 years, there'll be that video of someone to be able to look back on it and see it.
Exactly. And it's sad to see, because it's the same thing happening even in Albania. Like, it's dying out how to make the jubleta, which is also such an old tradition. So it happens everywhere. It's also dying out here with like glisin and everything we do. So of course it's even harder for the Arbesh, who's such a small community, to preserve that. But it's amazing that they have done for so long, and now globalization will ruin that. Unfortunately, but it's also amazing to see like how many Arbesh moved to the US, like when all the Italians moved to the US, and how you can like still now, like 100 years later, they're like, oh no, I'm Albanian from Italy, and people know what that means. Like we also have these like super like stars who also are Arbesh, and it's crazy to see that people have preserved it so well, even in the US, which for me is like a place where you kind of just lose all your identity.
Of course, many of the diasporas we're talking about are trying to navigate through multiple cultures. How have what has helped you become more confident in your own identity?
Definitely, of course, moving back to my home country has really been helpful. But I honestly think as long as you know who you are and where you want to go, like you can always hold on to your identity. And I think it has to be something that's created uniquely for everybody. Everyone has a different identity. Everyone has different like connections to their roots, or like they'll uproot and have like a completely new identity. I think as long as you don't really listen to the masses and what they're saying, you'll be so much better off. There's no one way to be Albanian. There's no one way to celebrate your culture and your heritage at all. Like you can do it in so many different ways. And I think as long as you're happy with yourself, you'll also do good in like for others and in life. So that would definitely be like my way of doing it. And for me, I'm so set in my identity, but I've always been like that. I've always put being Albanian first, because I don't know, I never felt like Danish. It just wasn't for me. It wasn't. I appreciate them. I love the Danish people. I love Denmark, but it was never mine fully. But when I was here, I always felt like it was mine.
Touching on that, you have been a bridge for many of the diaspora to learn about their culture, to learn about the history. How have you adapted to this? How have you grown into this position that you might have not asked for, but now you're in? And how has that developed naturally over time?
I think it hasn't been like, obviously with the kind of content I make, it hasn't been that difficult. Like sometimes it gets overwhelming with like a lot of messages at once, and I really do try to write in like personalized message to each person, because I know it's a big decision and you can't just make that based off some videos you've seen. And I always advise everyone to just try it for a couple of months. You don't have to move here and like just be set on, okay, now that's where I'm going to live if you've never tried it. I always say come for a summer, or come like off season, stay a month, try to take time off your work and then make a plan if you really like it, so you won't get as disappointed. And definitely, always have to see like, who are you as a person? What do you like do you actually want to move here for the right reasons, or do you just want to do it because you seem like that's, for you it seems like that's the only way to like reconnect with your roots? Because I feel like a lot of us feel like rootless like everywhere right now. And it's the same with, even for Danish people or for like the British, they feel like they're losing their culture. So I understand this like trend and idea of like going back, but no matter what, like going back will always look different for each person, because you never know what you're going to meet there. And even here people have evolved, like people
Yeah.
think differently, and it has become more and more like westernized even in Kosovo. And if you don't like that, then of course it's going to be a bit difficult. But yeah, I really try to like take time to explain it to people. I try to make videos. I will keep making videos about it because that's a lot easier. I've tried to explain the job part, but even that is so individual. Like I don't, like if I don't know what people have studied, it's really hard. Like I wish I could just make like a huge company and just hire everybody who wants to live here. But definitely, like my biggest advice is the original program for like first timers, and then to move on to the citizen diplomacy program, or find these private companies and like even just do an internship. And I think it's so much
Mhm.
easier when you're young and you're still in high school, or like at the beginning of your bachelor's degree, and to come here and maybe write your thesis and just see like, do you like it or not, and then prolong. But I definitely think everyone should try to live here, at least for
Yeah,
a little while.
definitely. I think it's a very good insight. As you said, you can just try it, and if you are young, you don't miss out on much at the end of the day. You might look your cat.
This biggie.
Do you take it on? You take it to different countries,
Yeah.
your cat.
I haven't taken it like to like, I've taken him to Albania and like Macedonia and so on, but like for flights I haven't brought him yet, but I really want to. He's amazing. I found him here, and I've always wanted a cat, and I've never been able to because I moved out around so a lot. So for me it was also kind of like a symbol of like, I'm staying. Like I've decided where I'm living and I'm staying here. And then I got Biggie, which has been such a amazing experience. He's so cute.
It's very cool. Very cool. I wanted to touch on something you were speaking about a little earlier. Is I read a topic about diaspora, but from Japan, and there was families in Japan that, of course, emigrated to the US or the UK around 70 years ago. And so this would be their grandkids from the first immigrants. Their grandkids kept the Japanese culture of their grandparents and was very like assimilated into their culture, learned a lot from the grandparents. But then when they went back to Japan, they didn't recognize anything. And it's like a cool topic to understand is that yes, we are diaspora. Of course, our parents emigrated and they hold on to that of 40 years ago, let alone that our British that held on to it 500 years ago. And then, as you said, there is a different version of our home country to everyone, basically, Albania and Kosovo. And it's kind of unique to the identity. But how do people understand it is one of the things, because when you're having conversations about Albania or Kosovo, if I speak to my parents sometimes about Albania, about the professional sense, I'm like, what professional sense? And
Yeah.
I'm like, no, it's been 30 years. So how do you see that, especially now you've moved back as well?
Yeah, for me, like again, because I was here so much, I obviously saw all the developments, and I'm young enough to work in that structure, so I see it. My parents understand it now that I live here. They have a different view, because they definitely also, a lot of our parents think it's like a step down to like come back and work here, because they've worked so hard to take us to these other countries. And I feel like, especially with Albanians, I don't know, I don't think it's the same like with the Japanese community or like any other community, where they kind of like look down on themselves whenever someone else approaches them. But this is a huge thing I've seen with Albanians, that everyone's better than us. And like it's also like a part of like our hospitality, like the guest must be treated like a god. But it's really difficult to like explain that being young here and working here is not much different than Denmark. If you work in the any sector you work in, you'll still have the same problems, you'll still have the same solutions. And Albanians who grew up in Kosovo are just as skilled and just as smart, and like they have just as good degrees as everyone else. Some of them are actually much smarter. I feel like they get such a higher education like from a young age than I did in Denmark, because they learn so many different topics and things, whereas in Denmark there was like a whole other level. This depends like from country to country, but I do feel like sometimes we have, because they think of it as like pre-war times and war times, and they still haven't let go of that version of Kosovo, they will have like a negative view. And I saw this from so many of my friends who also moved here, and especially like the ones from the US or like bigger like countries. Everyone just had so many negative things to say, which is just not helpful at all, because like it's a huge decision already to decide to move back here. But then when everyone starts to like make you doubt yourself, or tells you that you're wasting your time, or that you're going to be disappointed, it's just so much harder. And that's why I just celebrate everyone who actually comes here and moves here, and there's such a huge community of, not just with the program, I've met so many people, and obviously get so many messages from people who have moved back here like years ago, and they all have the same experience. Everyone's always like, oh, why did you do that, or why would you move back? Even people who actually live here don't see it as positively. And some of them are also still stuck in that mentality of like, oh, nothing's moving forward and nothing good is happening, which was what inspired me to do the political videos. Which it was not about like promoting any like political party, it was about promoting what's actually happening in Kosovo, like how's the dialogue moving forward, how many people are moving back, what kind of business are they creating, because it's something that doesn't really get televised, and you don't really know about it unless you're like in this industry. But I think it's sad that people have like an automatic something negative to say when you decide to move back. You'll also have a lot of comments from other Albanians who live in Diaspora, who are like, oh, that's such a dumb decision, like I would never do that, or like you'll be back in a year, or you only did that because you have a Danish passport or whatever. And I'm always like, it comes from a point of jealousy, I think, because they also really want to do that. And some of them I've even had like a year later like message me again to be like, I was so wrong, I'm so sorry, like I was like, it's just my dream to also like live there, and I just wanted to be bitter because like, why can you do it when I can't do it, or something like that. And I don't know, like I think also for like the older generation it can be a problem, because they've also always dreamt of doing it, and then reality became something else. And even for them it's hard to maybe see their children then like live that dream of moving back, because like I get it from like a parent's perspective or a grandparent's perspective, because they gave up so much to educate us and take us somewhere else and learn a new culture. And then it kind of feels like, obviously they should be happy, but it kind of feels like throwing it all in their face and be like, yep, I'm gonna go back. Like, thank you for like the last 40 years you've lived without your community, but I'm gonna go back to my community. Like, and then enjoy. I get all the perspectives, but I really do think everyone should do what benefits them and what they want to do, and live their own truth and have their own identity.
It's true, and I think it's very deep into that perspective thing. As you mentioned, parents, grandparents did emigrate, did move out to other countries for, of
Their
course,
children.
exactly their children education. But then it is a perspective of why did they do that? If they wanted to have their children to have a better life, and now that they do have a better life, they do have this kind of opportunity to go back. Embrace it, be happy, try it out. It's never the end of the world. If our parents, who had some of them didn't have any chance to even come back to Kosovo, Albania, at the end of the day, if we want to go back to Denmark or Britain, we can just go back. It's not as hard as they once had it. So it's very true.
Yeah, but a lot of people don't understand that perspective, that you can literally just move again. It's not the end of the world, unless you've made like some huge investment, which like obviously that's not the case always, but you can always go back. And I think that's also, I get like a lot of like negative comments from people who are like, oh yeah, you're talking about how easy it is and how much you love it, but like you can always like just go back to Denmark. I'm like, yeah, thank God. Like, why is that a problem? How is it an issue? I'll try it out. Maybe I'll stay here for the rest of my life, maybe not, but I don't really owe it to anyone. I'm doing it for myself. I'm not harming anyone by living here or not living in Denmark. But people always will have weird comments, but I think it always comes from a place of fear for themselves, or from like insecurity. And then from what I've seen, like also with all the other fellows, all of their parents have like changed perspective, and a lot of them even want to like move back here as well, now that they see that it is possible, there are ways of doing it, and you can find a way to live and make a living here as well.
Definitely. And to touch on that kind of online presence that you have, you'll always get that negative comments, negative anything. At the end of the day, this is social media right now. So by blending all of that honesty, emotion, and information, how have you learned to block out some of that? And also touching on the diplomacy side, how do you think using emotions in diplomacy is undervalued right now, and how do you see it shaping?
It's definitely undervalued. I think it's something completely new, and also diplomacy is completely shifting gears. It's not just for us, like globally, of course, with social media. Also, now that you have all the like biggest news and like even war declarations happening on Twitter, like everything is changing, everything's moving fast, and people just post every single feeling they have, which is also like a very weird perspective. Even professionals, even diplomats, even presidents, like you have a completely different world now. But I do think like if you lead with emotion, with honest emotion, with empathy, with everything, you will never be wrong. If you're just expressing your own emotions, your own authenticity, and if you're not seeking to harm anyone or like impact anything negatively, I really don't think you can go wrong. Even if you're, of course, if you're sharing misinformation on purpose, that's completely different. But if you're talking about your own lived experiences, that's on you, and
Definitely.
there's nothing wrong with that. Like everyone can have different feelings, but I think we should be more focused on sharing all those positive feelings and like our happiness instead of just like negativity, because I see that so much on social media. Like every time people want to like make a video is about something negative or something they don't like or something they hate or da da da, and then everything just looks worse than it is, which really has been bothering me. So I try to do the opposite. And I understand, as I said earlier, like negativity gets more clicks. It's the same for like news media. It's not necessarily just because we live in a digital age. It was the same when it was just newspapers. Like negativity will always draw people in because of their fear instinct and everything. But if we try, if everyone becomes more positive, you will find the right people as well to like watch your content.
Definitely. And it's always a fact that it's easier to be negative than it is positive. It's easier to find bad. And it's about people just changing their perspective, changing their initial thought. Because if your initial thought is negative, it's going to be negative. If it's
Exactly.
positive, it's going to be positive. So there will be more, especially with content like yours. And then for people that are inspired by you, what would you tell someone who wants to speak up but struggles to be sincere or impactful in content creation?
Definitely just keep doing it, be yourself, keep posting. Is also even let the negative comments happen. Those are going to give you more engagement because people will start arguing. Let the negative comments be there, because if you know your truth, if you know your point of view and everything, it shouldn't impact you as much. It definitely doesn't impact me when someone starts like cussing me out or writing like weird shit, because I know who I am. I know what I do. I know I'm really happy with my life as well. So as long as I'm happy and everyone around me is happy and I'm loved by my family and love them back, like I'm fine. But I definitely think like I get that it's really scary to put yourself out there and to just be, you never know who's going to watch your videos, you never know what's going to happen. But for me, like all the great things I've achieved, and all the clients I have now are from my videos. Everyone has found me through that content, like that super niche content. And as I said, as long as you're yourself and authentic, then the right people will find you. If you do something that's not you, then you'll attract wrong people. And this goes for life as well, not just social media, but you will always attract whatever you are. And for me, I've had so many great people like that I've connected with. I've met so many amazing people, and it has led to opportunities I never thought I would have, and jobs I've never thought I would have. And it also made me accomplish my goal of living in Kosovo, which if I hadn't done the videos, I probably wouldn't have been as comfortable here now as I am. So yeah, to post it.
Great. And then looking back at this last year, from moving to Kosovo, the fellowship, all your more content creation, what has this chapter actually taught you about yourself?
It's taught me definitely that it's not scary to have roots. It's not scary to stay in one place, and that I have finally found a place where I can really like build something and stay put. I never had that before. I always was thinking of what am I going to do next? What am I going to do next? But Kosovo has definitely taught me to just live in the present. I don't really think like 2 months ahead or 3 months ahead what I'm going to work with or what's going to happen here. I just think today, tomorrow, what am I gonna do? Who am I gonna hang out with? What am I gonna eat? And that has really changed my perspective because, like in Denmark, I had like a 10-year plan, which like there's like that saying, like you make a plan and God laughs at you, because like you don't know what's going to happen. You cannot make 10-year plans. And now I think it's funny here, every time someone tries to book a meeting like 3 months in advance, I'm like, okay, like inshallah yanajal shnash. That's what people say here when I try to ask them, like, oh, let's have coffee next week. They're like, inshallah shnash. Like, you cannot even have a coffee date a week ahead, let alone like make great life plans. So now it has taught me to just live in the moment, which I really think was necessary for me and maybe for a lot of other people as well. And to not constantly think like, oh, like what am I going to do next year or 2 years like ahead, or what I think about what I have achieved and not like what I will achieve, which is also super helpful. Because when I think of like 2 3 years ago, like I've like that Ariana like was dreaming of this life, so I have achieved that. So that's why like from now on I try to live in the present and enjoy every single moment.
Just to go even deeper, what advice would you give to someone that's thinking about moving back to Kosovo, Albania, or their home country? How did you make that bold decision yourself? And also, how long did it take you? I know COVID happened, but how long did it actually take you from it being a thought to actually putting it into fruition?
After COVID, when it was possible, it definitely did take some time, because I was in a full-time job that I really loved, and I was getting a really good salary, and everyone around me was like, "Do not quit that job, because like you're making good money in software sales." It was so amazing, and I loved the job. I loved like working with all my colleagues there. And for me, it was difficult because I was in such a good position. Like I had a great apartment in Copenhagen, great friends, like my family was close by. So everything was perfect. And I think that's when you should move. Because like I said, as soon as you get comfortable, like that's gonna be the rest of your life. And then you're gonna be like the parents and the grandparents who stayed for 40 years because it was more comfortable. So I made that decision, but I also planned ahead and knew like, okay, this is how many more months I have to work, and like save money to have like enough money to figure out what I want to do afterwards. So I did also have savings. I didn't just like out of the blue, like with zero money, like just move. I think you can definitely do that if you have like a job set in place, but don't come here with like 100 euros in your bank account, which I don't think anyone will do. But yeah, save up, plan ahead, find a place to live if you don't already have one. Use your connections for sure. Like if you have any like family members, anything here, ask them, because they will be much more helpful than like any agency. And just yeah, plan ahead, and most importantly, just do it. Like no matter how comfortable you are, if you have that feeling inside of you that you need to move to Kosovo, you need to move to Albania, just do it. The right time is when you have that feeling and when you're still young, because there will be a point where you have like a wife or husband and children and everything, and then it's really tough to just do it decisions. But while you're still young and still like going like just living, there's no reason not to do it. And it's just such a big life skill. Even if you just move here for 6 months, you still have that even on your resume. Like it's gonna attract a lot of like it's gonna attract jobs as well. You're gonna have a greater network. And I say this for everyone who wants to move anywhere, because it was the same discussion with my peers back at uni when I was moving to Germany and the UK. They're like, "How can you do that? It's like you have never lived there. Why would you do that?" I'm like, just because. Like just do it just because it's going to be a really great story to tell when you're 80, and you can tell like, oh, I've lived in all of these countries, and why not? So yeah, that's my main advice. Just jump right into it.
And
Have
the
money.
no problem, but the biggest failure in that sense of moving is that you have 6 months of an amazing story that you just tried something crazy and
Exactly.
like is that truly a failure, or is it just like a 6 month holiday where
It's
you
just
just tried?
part of life. Life is so long. Like if you really live it right, it will look short, but it's life is long. There's no reason to live in the same city in the same country for like 100 years. Like it doesn't make any sense. You're not losing out on anything. You're not missing out. Especially like for me in Denmark, it wasn't like I've missed out every time I've left. Like with my friendships and so how connected we are on every single app. Like I still know what's going on with my friends. I still keep in touch with them. I don't necessarily have to be in Denmark every single day to still be a part of everything that's happening there. And yeah, I think a lot of people don't move because of that fear of like missing out on things happening at home, but you can't really not live like that. Just go wherever the world is calling you right now. Go there, check it out. If you don't like it, move.
Amazing. And what does the future look like for Ariana? Of course, you finished your CDF program. You've now been in Kosovo for 18 months. What is the future's next steps?
Now I'm focusing on working with Dafina Naziri for sure, which is like a whole new market for me. She's an international makeup artist, and she's amazing. Just the last couple of like months where I've gotten to really know her, she's been working with Bebereja at the Met Gala, which was insane, and but met with Makeup by Mario, and she keeps getting called to all these like huge international events, and I feel like it's a different kind of diplomacy, definitely, but it's so much more impactful than what we can do as a ministry because people are just more interested in that line of work. People are more interested in what's Bebereja, Dua Lipa, Rita Ora doing, and what are like what's happening in this kind of world. And she also has like a huge following as well. And also is like a success story. She also moved from Germany to Kosovo when she was 18 and built all of this herself. So it's been really inspiring for me to see another woman who just did it. Like she didn't have any plans. She just came. She knew she wanted to live in Kosovo, and she just came here. And then we met by fate, I guess, and also through my videos. She actually found me on TikTok and just messaged me, and I'm definitely going to focus on my work with her and to maximize that, also the content, but also all the great work she does and that we're going to do together now. And I also still work with my Danish clients, with my German clients. That's still going to be ongoing, and with any other clients or projects I find interesting. But definitely my focus will be that, like, job wise. And now it's summer, so my focus will also be to enjoy my summer and take a break, spend time with my family, with my friends, now that the program is also over, and also maybe take a little break from politics.
And as we wrap up this podcast, if people were just to take one thing from our conversation today, what do you hope it is?
That they should do what they want to do without asking anyone.
Make that decision, even
Make
if
a
you
decision, just go and do it. Like even if it's a week, just do it.
don't. Amazing. Thank you very much, Ariana. It's been a pleasure to have you on. All the ALSA UK team are so amazed by all that you do. And thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me. And bantfala kredve.
Where can, of course, all of our audience find you?
Mm, everywhere, every social media platform. Ariana Kra. So yeah, hopefully they can find me there.
Amazing. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.